remember to. So I'm going to start with some announcements and then pray, and then I'm going to hand it over first to Rebecca and then to Kate. So here we go. Announcements. Um, Next week, in a couple of days, on Tuesday at 3 p.m., is the last Coffee with PYWA going into the summer. So we take a hiatus during June and July. We'll be back in August. But we're pretty excited that Big Ideas in Youth Ministry folks are joining with PYWA board folks, and we're going to be talking about new paths in confirmation. So if you've ever wondered whether confirmation was still working, if you think, wow, is this still meaningful? If you think, wow, I can't stand doing this and I don't know if my youth know anything more about the church, we are going to talk about all of that. So hope you can join us 3 p.m. on Tuesday. Next thing is a new initiative we're pretty excited about. Now, you all are on here, so maybe you are readers, but we know there are a lot of folks who are watchers more than they're readers. And so we're starting a new virtual community called Screen to Screen. And on May 13th at 1 o'clock, so we're switching it up a little bit, knowing that some folks who have kids, 3 o'clock ends up being pickup time. So we're going to try 1 o'clock Eastern time. We're going to do screen to screen, and it's going to be discussions of movies, films, and short series. And we are starting off with the Netflix series Adolescence. I know a ton of people were really, that first episode, horribly disturbed by that series, but it has garnered a lot of conversation. Like in the EU, it's just, they're rethinking a whole lot of conversations about young people and social media, all the things. It's called Adolescence. And the first episode is really tough to watch. Yeah, really tough to watch. I think after that, it's kind of the aftermath of a tragedy, and it's also disturbing, but it begins to, I think, help you process it all. So we're going to be discussing it and talking about what it might say to us in youth ministry. And then I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca to give another exciting announcement.
Yeah, we're getting pumped for our youth worker gathering that's going to happen in October 6th through 8th. I'll put some things in the chat in case you don't hear me. But October 6th through 8th is a big gathering that we're having in San Diego, California, and it is called Come to the Water. It will be based off of John chapter well, no, John chapter 21, verses 4 through 14, where Jesus is having breakfast on the beach with the disciples. We're going to have workshops, keynote. There will be kind of a balance between rest and renewal and learning. So, something for everyone. So, we really hope that you can come. Registration has opened. I'll put the link in the chat. It's $100 early bird until June 30th. So we really hope that you can come and join us in San Diego. Yeah, Kate or Eileen, do you want to say anything else about it? Eileen?
Yeah, we are very excited in the planning stages, hammering out we will be announcing a keynote speaker soon, but just finalizing some information. But I think people will be stoked for this person. And yeah, it's going to be a time of renewal. And I think I had coffee with another youth worker yesterday and was just reminded of all the ways that this really fun and dynamic job can be hard. And some of us have great heads of staff, and some of us have challenging ones. And so to get youth workers together in one space where we can tell our stories and be supported, I think is really, really valuable. And there are some great organizations that are jumping in that want to offer support as well. So I am really hopeful to just gather with people and be together. So that's what I'll say.
Also,
And oh,
October in San Diego is like the perfect time.
it's our real summer. I don't know if you all are aware of May gray, June gloom. Those are not the times to come to San Diego for great weather. But we will guarantee a sunset that is gorgeous that time of year, and it's warm. So it'll, yeah, just as things are starting to cool down elsewhere, we that's our best weather. So, and the other thing, just to let you all know, we've fundraised on the back end for this event. The real cost is not $100. This event has been heavily subsidized by PYT and some donors who are like, youth workers, we love youth workers, and wrote checks. So just if people are like, wow, that seems really inexpensive, it's because every time we've told people about this event, they've been really supportive, even down to food being donated, meals, because people love what you all do. And that's not always communicated. So this really is an event to just come and be poured into and acknowledged for the amazing work you do. So we're grateful for you all.
And yes, PYT is Presbyterian Youth Triennium. So Gina Yeager's office is PYAT, Presbyterian Youth and Triennium. So anyway, all the letters all the time. So all right, let's pray, and then let's turn this over to Kate and get started. Creator God, source of our greatest joy, we give you thanks for this day, for these people, for their ministries, and for young people who remind us what unbridled joy can look and feel like. During this discussion, we ask you to guide us towards greater understanding about how to open ourselves up to what young people can teach us about joy, about community, and about you. Amen.
Amen. It is great to have you all here. So thanks for setting aside a few minutes of your day to be here. Um, we are discussing Delighted, and it feels fitting that as we begin, I would love to take some time for us to just introduce ourselves, your name, and where you're coming from and what you do. But then also maybe you can share something of where do you find joy in your ministry? And so as we share, I'll start. My name is Kate. I am in McMinnville, Oregon, which is a little more than an hour southwest of Portland. And I do children, youth, and family ministry here. And we do a youth collective in our community. So we have 4 churches that all do youth ministry together, which is a bit talked about a bit, not ours, but the Bend Youth Collective is talked about a bit in this book. So we do something very similar. And the thing that I find joy as I was reading this book, one of the things that came to mind was um, I love when we are traveling from place to place. So whether it's for our service learning trip or for camp or whatever, the conversations that happen in the car, because those are the things that like you start off with like everyone's nice and then everyone's quiet and doing their own thing. And then like you get into the like we've been in a car for forever and then like the real stories and conversations come out. And that's the things that you don't always get in your like brief youth ministry time. And so those are one of my favorite parts. Um, let's see. Tanya, will you share?
Hi, I'm Tanya Schrader. I'm from Neenah, Wisconsin, which is in the general Green Bay area. I am currently the interim director of youth and Christian education and growing that position kind of from scratch. And I find joy in kind of the after our youth night. For example, just on Sunday night, we walked the labyrinth together as the high school youth group. And afterwards, the kids just kind of mingled around in the room. It was time to go, but they started playing ping pong anyway and just kind of chatting and kind of that same type of thing as you mentioned, Kate, where it's just like the observing their natural environment. And one of them was like, "Hey, I really enjoyed tonight. Thanks for doing it." And I was like, "Oh, like it was a football player, 15-year-old boy, and he thanked me for setting up the labyrinth for them." So just kind of the little things like that it's like, yeah, that's why we're here.
And will you invite someone else?
Sure. Robin?
Hi, my name's Robin. I'm at Central Presbyterian in Austin, Texas, and I'm the Children and Youth Ministry Coordinator. And been here for a few years now, and I really love it. So thanks. This is my first meeting with you guys, finally. I've been a member for a minute, so I'm really grateful for this time that I get to share with you all. And I think probably my favorite thing, the thing that brings me joy, and it's in the challenges. Whenever I get to come across a new challenge and then find solutions and find ways to make it connect for people, that it's so fulfilling. Thank you. Oh, and let's see. Eileen, would you go next, please?
Well, I'm Eileen, and I get to serve with great joy as one of the co-moderators of PYWA. But I'm also an associate pastor, and I work with middle school and high schoolers. And I think um, just it's funny because sometimes I'm loathing youth group on Wednesday because it feels like you're planning a party every week for all your closest friends, and there's like the stress. And I'm always amazed. Very few nights am I driving home like not feeling sort of that fulfillment because of conversations had, because of the life that they share. Um, I am always amazed when a kid wants to tell me about something that's going on in their world, whether they're seeking advice on how to talk to a teacher who they're not getting along with, or even getting invited into the space of who likes who. There's just that joy, and it's fun. So I'm really grateful for student ministry and just that opportunity to engage in life with kids. So, and I'll invite Nancy to share.
Thank you. I'm Nancy. I'm the Director of Youth and Family Ministries here at Grace First Presbyterian Church in Long Beach, California. And I'm so excited to be on today. I just saw it in my email. I do the monthly coffee thing, and I've been blessed to be able to meet up at the luncheon at APSI the past few years. And so I haven't read the book, Telling Myself Early, but I've got it in my Amazon cart. The minute I saw the email, I didn't know about it, but it sounds like a great book, and I'm excited to hear about it and hopefully catch up reading. Um, I've agreed so much with so much what people have been saying about, what happens on youth group nights and stuff. I'd say that I've really gotten a lot of joy out of. We just had two kids get confirmed on Palm Sunday, and teaching the class and listening to their questions and then listening to their statements of faith. It's just, really feels like it's what it's all about. And it was quite emotional, and and especially too when you've been able to be with these kids really since they were in children's ministry all the way up, and to be able to the privilege of getting to walk this spiritual walk with them is just, it's everything. So it was a wonderful, wonderful Palm Sunday with confirmation. And that's it for me. Jess?
Thanks, Nancy. My name is Jess, short for Jessica Regal, and I am a pastor in Greensboro, North Carolina. And my favorite moment has actually to do with adults and not with youth. And that is when the adults come up to me and they're like, "These kids are amazing." And I'm like, shit. Why do you think I hang out with them all the time? But like that's the thing for me is when adults finally get on their level and actually have conversations and build relationships and practice fellowship and understand that these young people are people and that they're really incredible, funny, smart humans. Um, and then when they start like investing in the youth program because of that, that's kind of my thing is that every minute I spend with art, I feel like I won the lottery of young people here. They're incredible. And so it means a lot to me when other adults finally wake up to that reality, I think is kind of my one of my most joyful in a little bit of a snarly way, but still one of my most joyful moments. And I will pass it on to Bonnie.
Well, hi, I'm Bonnie, and I will also confess I thought this was the confirmation one, but I'm deciding to stay. So, I did not read the book, but I was interested in it, so I will mostly listen as you talk about it. But I am the director of youth ministries at Christ Presbyterian Church in Canton, Ohio. So it's a part-time position, and I'm just always eager to learn more. So that's why I'm on the call. And a couple things that bring me joy. We've been inviting different people to come and talk to the youth about their faith stories. And that's been really a joy to see how the kids connect with those stories. And I also love going to their extracurricular activities. I don't know if that's weird, but I feel like I always learn something new about them, that they might not share otherwise. So it's a big connection point. Oh, and I will pass it to Rich.
Hey there, Rich Richards. I'm director of youth ministry and children's music at Hudson Memorial Presbyterian Church here in sunny today, Raleigh, North Carolina. And missed y'all at APSE. I just recently, 10 weeks ago, my wife and I had our second little one, little Charlotte, Charlie. We call her Charlie. So I would have loved to have been with y'all, but was doing some early parental things. So the thing that I would say recently, where joy is abound, recently we formed a youth arts troupe. It's sort of like drama troupe meets music ensemble of some kind. And the way that they are engaging in worship with joy and excitement and energy, and new knowledge. They're teaching us new ways of worshiping. I think that tops it for me right now. Check in with me next week. There might be a new joy, but right now that's it. So let's see, Jenny.
Hello, I am Jenny Gordon, and I am the Director of Youth Ministries at First Presbyterian Church in Hammond, Louisiana. That's about 30 minutes north of New Orleans and east of Baton Rouge. And the thing that I think I like most about, at least the thing that's bringing me the most joy is same as Bonnie, going to their extracurricular activities. I really love it because the youth ministry is just getting started again after several years of hiatus. And so it's where I actually get to meet the families. A lot of the parents don't come right now, or they come very sporadically. So it is awesome, number one, to see the students shine at what they love doing. And it's also great to like have a really good spot to sit down and talk to the parents or other family members and just, see what they're up to. And then, of course, seeing the student after the event, whatever it is, and how excited they are to have people there to see them. So, oh, and I will ask Anna to please share.
Hi everyone, I'm Anna San. I am one half of the youth ministry team in Covenant Presbyterian Church in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And gosh, hearing everyone's, I'm like, oh, that reminds me of something else. That reminds me. But I think the thing that has stuck out to me most recently is we did a joint activity with the youth and the upper elementary kids. We're working on a spring play together, but the youth didn't get their normal Sunday school time. And so after we were done with that, they asked me if they could go back to the youth loft and hang out for a while at noon on a Sunday. And that was just, that felt really good. Rebecca, have you gone?
Hi, I'm Rebecca Witt. I'm in Winchester, Virginia, which is about an hour and a half outside of DC. I'm the director for youth and young adults, but I do things with children and technology and whatever gets thrown my way. I'm also on the PYWA board. What brings me joy is recreation, which was mentioned in the book, especially when we do cooperative play where we're all working together on the same goal or something like that. Because the world is a very competitive place. So it's nice when we get to kind of step out of that and do something a little differently. And Christy, would you like to share?
Hey, I'm Christy Williams. I'm the organizational administrator, so the staff person for PYWA. And my full-time job is that I am the director of Dogwood Acres Retreat Center and Summer Camp for the Presbytery of Florida. And I think what brings me joy are the aha moments when you suddenly see that light bulb go off and young people are I don't know, you can just see it fill them. And so that really brings me joy. Kate, back to you.
Thanks. And congratulations, Rich, on new baby. That's huge.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Old dad crew here. This is my second marriage with second set. So yeah, it's different second time around. But thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you look awake.
Well,
so that's half the battle.
Looks can be deceiving.
As we jumped in, or as we jump in, I figure we would touch on these like the three main topics and then kind of wrap up looking at the last couple chapters. I read this book when it first came out, and then the last 24 hours I've kind of tried to binge it again to update myself. And I think the thing that stands out to me the most, and this is, at least for me, is that in seminary, there's so much of the like, here's how you do things, and on paper, there's this like pretty picture of how it all looks. And this book to me feels a lot of the like, okay, it's one thing to do things in theory, but it's another thing to do things in practice. And so how do things look in practice? So I want to start off by talking about relationships. What do relationships look like in your context? And what did you think about what they had to say about relationships and friendships and what those look like between different people in the congregation, but also you as a leader and the youth who you work with. So, any thoughts?
I really appreciated, I remember when I started in youth ministry, one of my coworkers was like, it's really important that we're not friends with the kids. And like when that was first said, I was like, what? Like that seems disingenuous. And then when, Jesus was like, I'm no longer calling you servants, but I'm calling you friends. There was this part of me that I was like, that is right. That is because I think if you are doing youth ministry, right, of course, good friendships have good boundaries. And I think that there's like this delicate balance that is really important. I mean, you do become friends with your students and they don't stay students forever. And then, like, if you've done youth ministry well, you're probably going to walk with them for a lot longer. So I was like, when I read that in the book, I was like, woohoo, like, yay. I knew this was, this felt really right. So if you haven't read the book yet, I would say that's like a shout out to this book that I really appreciated. Um, and they do start that topic talking about good boundaries, what that looks like, and the things that obviously we should not be sharing with students as adults. But um, they're very close to being on the pericope of being adults. And so it does end up being sort of that reality of life shared. So I really appreciated that. And I can let that comment lie because there was a lot. This was a great book and it's a short read. So if you haven't gotten it yet, I do highly recommend this book. And I used a quote from this book in a sermon recently because I thought it was so good. And the quote that I used was in chapter 6 of Why We Do This. And one of the things that they wrote was the love of God always pushes further and further out to those our society has excluded. And I really appreciated that because I think our society does still have a hard time with teenagers and all their antics. So it takes special people to enjoy and laugh and have a sense of humor about said antics.
I do think though that we're not taught, like, luckily PYWA has in their Uphold video series, Brian Kuhn did a thing about healthy boundaries. It's mostly about healthy boundaries to save ourselves. It's not so much healthy boundaries that we should have with the young people. But I mean, part of the healthy boundaries are to save ourselves, but even in the book, when they talk about like healthy and appropriate boundaries, they don't say, and like, here's the list of them really, because of course those are going to be different like within each context. But also I just remember like Michelle Thomas Bush doing the whole thing about, never have a young person text you, always have like 7 other people in the text with you. And, and like, yes, but also youth text me, like, so, it's hard to just say like, sod off, kid, like, I mean, you really sort of have to work hard to like, I'm answering you about when youth group is, and I'm now pulling in a youth advisor to also hear that answer and stuff. So I do think the healthy boundaries thing allows us to have like richer friendships within the church and with our youth. But I don't know how often, my presbytery is certainly not doing like, trainings on that. And I don't know how often people are really, especially for people who are younger, who are starting out and who might be mistaken for youth themselves. I know it's harder to keep those lines and know where the lines are. So for me, I still was like, oh, yeah, healthy boundaries are important. How do young, first time youth people know always, or how to live those boundaries out? Not just like, oh, here's the list even, but how do I live that out? So.
And along those lines, that transit, like for people who are younger or newer to youth ministry, that transition from being the young person in a relationship with an older person to now you're the older person in the relationship with the younger person. Yeah. Others have thoughts? I can say one of the things that has been interesting in my current position. I am finishing up my 8th year here, and prior to this, I was in the DC area where things were much more formal, and there was very much a like, I am the staff person and you are the congregant. But here, where I'm at, it's a smaller town, and so the people who are in my ministry are also the people who are my neighbors, and they're their parents are my friends. I am the emergency contact for some of my kids, for school. And and I like it so much more that it's like we get to do all of life together, and it's not this like very siloed, like you have this one role. Um, and I think that one of the things that I was trying to find the quote, and I think it's on page 27 where it talks about how like kids can read you. Like they know if what you're looking for is like a transactional relationship of like, like what can I offer you or what can you offer me? But that true relationships with kids, like you have to prove to them that like you're just there to be in relationship with them. Like it's not transactional. And that's like a different kind of way of being in relationship with one another. Um, I appreciated that. And I think so often, and this is where Rebecca, Christy, and I kind of got into it in our text before this, is so often we hear about like butts in the pews, like we want the kids in church, or like they need to, like when I was a kid, I did, blah 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 blah. And so like it, and even that of just saying like we want what's best for you, so we need you here in church, that's still transactional. Um,
And I think
I don't
like
know.
balance, well, I think like there's this balance because as I was reading like on page 35, it talks about it's more on the transactional relationships and it talks about where we find joy in those relationships. But I still think, I mean, how many of you are in your first 5 years in this particular call? Maybe not in ministry. I still think about Fowler's, faith development bridge and how it doesn't matter how old you are. When you move to a new place, you start at trusting again. And then you go to belonging, then you go to questioning, then you go to committed faith. And I still think like every time, I think it's still true that youth workers are at their positions for 5 years or less, and then they move on. So every time youth workers start at a new place, they're trying to figure out trust. And trust takes a while. So we're in this both end where we're trying to figure out a lot of times where we belong in that congregation. And, I was at my last call for 35 years. Like, yeah, I had like deep relationships with people, but, that doesn't happen right away. And so when I was reading this, a lot of what I was thinking is, but how do we support each other, especially in the beginning of a call, no matter how long you've been doing youth ministry, so that you can forge relationships that are authentic, but you're also trying to figure out whether you can trust the congregation too. So
Yeah, I totally get that. Because I'm a introvert who has learned over the years extrovert. Uh, I have extrovert qualities that I've learned, but yeah, I really love the one-on-one or the one-on-two with other adults present. Um, but for example, Christy, this goes upon what you're talking about in terms of where is the line, the boundary line? Because if like in my case, the last congregation, the departure was just it was a traumatic thing for me. And when I arrived here, I had the head of staff who I was friends with previously say a year in, he said, uh, I expect you to, go and approach and sort of get into the relationship and this and that, and I see you pulling back. And I said, well, let's talk about this a little bit because if you have been through a traumatic experience with a congregation, right? That if you enter a new congregation, your level of requesting a friend request on social media, your level of accepting an invitation to a parent or a couple parents' families' houses, you have this this wall, and yet you're called to be in relationship with, right? And so um, uh, I have not read page 30, 35, or 200. I thought it was confirmation as well, Bonnie. But it's a real thing, right? It's a real thing, dealing with this level of trust when you do enter. I was there 4.5 years and been here almost 5 years now. So, but it's interesting, each chapter, each congregation.
Yeah, thanks, Rich. Yeah, go for it, Jess.
I think one of the issues for me is how siloed youth ministry is, and I've heard you um I just hate the hierarchy of like head of staff, lead pastor, associate, which frequently gets confused with the word assistant because they both start with ass, like, right? Like all of that, the way that we've created these hierarchies within the church and the way that we've siloed our ministries is one of the biggest barriers to relationship. And then it makes the youth pastor like Jesus Jr. so that when you leave, Rich, to your point, it's like traumatic, and that's never how it should be in a church. And so one of the real strengths of this book that I loved is this notion of the obligation for community that churches are supposed to have to each other, which includes youth and children. Um, and I don't know, it's kind of sad that we have to sell engagement with adolescents as joyful in a church. And I love that Wes points out, like, hey, church, we failed. Like, this is supposed to be set apart from society. I've had people in my congregation. The other thing that I've really struggled with just in being in this role is the way that um, uh, parents are expected to be the volunteers in my congregation. I don't know if that's true of yours, but it was like, oh, I served my time is the language someone used with me once. And I was like, have you ever been to a prison? Because I have. And hanging out with adolescents is nothing like being incarcerated, let me tell you, right? Like they are not, don't you ever compare hanging out with these children to being in an imprisoned. Like, what is wrong with you? Don't ever do that again. And, it's taken some real time, but most of my youth volunteers now are not parents. And that's very intentional on my part. Because I can name 700 people in my congregation who, if I needed a place to sleep because of an emergency, I could call. And my youth have difficulty naming five, and that's just to Wes's point in particular, that's not how it's supposed to be. And so I think I just want everyone in my congregation to read this book and understand like the goal of relationships isn't for the youth to have relationships with each other or even with them to have relationships with me or the other, youth staff or volunteers with the youth or whatever. The goal is relationship with everybody. I I've been trying to get our folks to know our young people better. And I said, this isn't my job. If you want the youth program to flourish, you have to get to know these children. And one of them had the audacity to say to me, could you just make a bulletin board? And I said, no, I'm not going to do your work for you. Like, no, are you kidding? But someone genuinely asked me to make a bulletin board so that she could learn the young people's names rather than actually talking with or engaging with them. Um, and I just love the way that this book very graciously invites people to a better way and to the mutual delight, right? It's not only a consumptive delight that we're taking from adolescence in a scary vampire way. It's oh, I can delight in you as a role model in addition to you delighting in me as a kid who goes to Golden Corral and shoves an ice cream cone in a chocolate fountain. So that's sort of my reflection on the relational element. I think this book did that really, really well.
Yeah, I didn't read the book either, sorry, but I love what you guys are talking about, and I wanted to make sure to say this because I totally agree with Jess in the sense like siloing is not the way, and being able to get them involved in all aspects of the church is so useful. And one of the ways that I think our church does that well here is the youth are involved in the worship service, and that took some doing to convince people. but and they're on like a regular rotation as a liturgist or an usher or someone who helps with sound or any of those things. And that has been very helpful. But also, whenever students go through confirmation, they get a mentor for the 6 to 8 weeks or whatever of the class, and they have assignments to do with that mentor. And they're not people who normally work in the youth ministry on purpose, so that they will get to know other people in the congregation. And I've seen some amazing relationships flourish between youth and some of our older elderly congregation and through that. And it's been pretty amazing. So I just wanted to share that part. I think that's a really cool thing that this church was doing before I got here.
Thanks, Jenny. And thanks, Jess. I appreciate your thoughts. Um, I want to move on to that second section about celebration and grief. And I think kind of where our conversation was heading lends itself well. Um, how does your youth ministry celebrate? And how do you grieve? Like, what does that look like in your context? Um, is there space for grief?
I think this is the one where, for me, I was just talking to a friend recently, and I was like, the bane of my existence are big churches, just because I feel like there's a certain size, and then you kind of have to silo everybody because you're trying to minister to different people, and so you're just like, age groups, what part of town do you live in, because you're trying to do this, but in like smaller churches, I think it's a lot easier to integrate everybody into the system and to not necessarily categorize folks. And we're not necessarily talking about like just the one-eared Mickey Mouse of the Mark DeVries, youth ministry stuff. But I do think that you can, with a smaller group, if you have 50 kids for youth group, you've got to have a program where you're breaking that down and you're figuring out like how to get everybody, on the same page. But if you have, 20 kids, 15 kids, 8 kids, you are having a lot more space for conversation. And so, I'm in Tallahassee, Florida, when FSU had a shooting last week, like at youth group, we were able to have all sorts of space, for talking about what you're afraid of, what you heard your parents talking about or whatever. And I think that's the same as far as the example they gave about the young person who lost their father, father died, and it brought up all kinds of doubts for, folks in the group. And so they started to have doubt night, where you could just come and kind of lament and express your doubts and uh, express your fears. And that was what you did that night. So nobody felt ostracized for like, oh, you did this or whatever. So anyway, I do think that's harder. I recognize that's harder when you have a critical mass of people, and you kind of are doing crowd control as well as, really good ministry. I'm not saying people in big churches are not doing like really good, quality youth ministry, but I do think there's a level of, it's harder to offer just space without program. So.
And I think there's something to be said for, I really like that idea of like doubt nights. Um, I feel like when I first started ministry, I felt this pressure to like know all the things about all the things, to kind of like earn my keep. And, whether it's with our children or with our youth, I've now been like, I have no idea about that. Like, like, oh, I'll do research and I'll bring it back to you. Or even like on Monday, was it on Sunday night, there was something I'm like, wait, there's this like sciency thing. And like there was this middle schooler who schooled me on what terminal velocity and all this stuff. And so it's like I don't have to like to know all the things about all the things. And so it creates space for people to ask questions or to say like I don't know about this. Um, which I appreciate. The one of the things I wanted to point out that I really appreciated in this chapter is the distinction between joy responders and joy producers. So often we expect, it talks about expecting youth to be the joy producers of like, oh, like they're young and they're vibrant and they have this energy, and therefore just them being present is going to somehow like produce the joy that we need for our congregation or give us the energy and the boost that we need. But giving, instead of putting that pressure on youth to provide the joy, that they simply get to respond to the joy just like we all do. And I really appreciated that of like taking that pressure off of them, um, and how this joy comes out of like these authentic relationships and this authentic being. And sometimes that comes from grief and sometimes it comes from celebrating, um, versus this kind of like the saccharine sweet joy, that sometimes the church gets stuck on. I don't know. Yeah, Rich, go for it.
One of the ways that I saw a mentor provide space, and then I started incorporating it probably 10 or more years ago in youth ministry is the space for grief that can be created through obviously repetition, spiritual practice, a sense of a spiritual practice. One way that we try to do that here, and I think that it is fairly, if you want to put it, a successful way of doing it for at least us in our context. We're a medium-sized Presbyterian church. Is that at the end of a time, whether it's on retreat or here on a Sunday evening or whenever we meet, we have what's called candle time. It's simply bringing one large pillar candle and putting in the middle of the room. It can be any room. We have one with a labyrinth on the carpet, meaning it's a part of the carpet square, so you can't like take it away. But it creates this space of permission, vulnerability, just by the use of one candle and the repetition of saying, "This is a holy time. This is a holy space. What's on your heart?" And you can really like some of the moments of joy and grief at the same time by what they're saying, but the joy that I and other adults have experienced is when you have that one or two young person who finally opens up, right? And it's that moment of light during the time of grief that they are sharing. And so it's this beautiful sort of interaction of light and dark, and physically light and dark too. We try to bring the lights down, but so we can still see one another, but it really does create that space where grief can happen and joys. We call it, candle time, joys and concerns. So
we do a similar thing. The middle school group does it as their opening, and the high school group does it as their closing. We light a candle, turn down the lights, and pass around a Jesus fish, and you share your highs and lows. And a lot of times I still have homework. I have to go back to school tomorrow. But every once in a while, we get those like, this has been heavy on my heart and I need to share with you. Or that's when we get to be like, you scored the winning basket in your basketball game, or you did a great job in the play, things like that. We learn a little bit more about their personal life or their school life that might not otherwise come out in our general activity for that night. So, it kind of pulls from the joys and concerns of the church service, but it really brings it down to their level, and the adults do it too. So we all share with one another and are kind of on that even ground of we all have highs and lows all the time.
I have a funny story about that real quick is I um was babysitting my niece and nephew. This was probably 3 or 4 years ago, and they um much younger. And I went into youth worker mode and we were eating dinner and I was like, what was the highlight of your day? What was the low light of your day? And for some reason it stuck with them. And so now every night at dinner for them, they start their dinner with the highlight and low light. But I've noticed my nephew, who's now 7, almost 8, um, he like sometimes will say like, we need to have dinner because I have some highlights and lowlights I need to talk about. And so, and while that's outside of the youth group context, it's creating those spaces that are that they know of, like they can check in with themselves and be like, this is what I need, is I need that space. And kind of exercising that muscle of sharing is important. I don't want us to miss out on the end or that third section. And so I'm going to transition us to that because to me, and maybe this is showing my hand a bit, that section on failure and confession, uh, for me, like that is hard. And so I could come up with a question, but I just want to hear your thoughts on it. What role does failure play in church? Because I think, at least for me, um, I feel like so much of my job depends on like, oh, being the best or performing well or feeling like I earned my keep. And so then being like, oh, but like let me tell you where I failed. Like I can quickly do that. But that's not what we look for in leadership in a church always. So yeah, so what does failure look like in ministry um, for you?
It didn't dawn on me that it was the third part of the book because I think I like read that in there's a section called Even If Ministry. And so I'll just read one of the quotes that I really struck with me. The daunting truth is that the vocation of ministry is predicated on a task that only Jesus can accomplish. We're supposed to stand in for Jesus. We're supposed to do this work and love these young people, even if they don't come around, even if not one life is changed, even if not a single person ever responds to us or to God. After all, that's the nature of parenting, whether our children are fostered, adopted, born to us, or simply borrowed for a couple hours on a Sunday night. We don't choose the children in our homes or in our churches. They are sent to us by the foster system, by their parents, or perhaps by God. And they kind of they go on. I actually underlined quite a bit in this is probably setting up for those moments when you will fail. And I think that to me, community has been the most important part, like professional communities, for the moments when I failed, for the moments when I have reached the point of diminishing return, at a particular place and it's time to go. And, but like also remembering the grace of being a beloved child of God, no matter what's happened. Or, and well, no, I mean, sometimes you have to go and just never do youth ministry again. But if you're a lifer, there's grace, and there are going to be moments when you say something that you didn't mean to say, or like you're tired and you yell at the wrong person that you're not really mad at. And I think in my ministry, like I've been around long enough that I've learned to now like preempt it with kids and tell them that this will happen, that I'm not perfect, that I'm going to have days when it's been rough, or I'm sad. And I think that also goes back into like where they were talking about friendship, because if you have that base with your youth, um, you know, you might have to own up to it. And I guess that's where the confession part comes in. But this book just really, I don't know, in the short pages, it did a really good job of um helping those ideas to blossom. And yeah, I think, if you haven't had one of those moments of needing to apologize and confess to your youth, um, you're probably new. And those days are coming. So, and if you stay in a long time, you'll have a lot of them. So just find an old youth worker and be like, tell me all your mistakes, and they'll be like, here's the litany. So
I also think setting up time for your volunteers to not just debrief, like I always love the parking lot meeting after youth group, where we're like, whoa, like what happened, or you're like, wow, I'm so excited that worked. We never thought it would, but I think not just debrief, but that confess, ask for help, and celebrate with your volunteers. I think that that's key. And I feel like I did a good job of recognizing both at the beginning of youth, of the programmatic year and at the end, like having the church celebrate those people. But I feel like in the middle, we might have done debrief while we were cleaning up. But I don't know how often we like sat together and sort of did the like confess, celebrate, lament, pray for. And if I could go back over all those years, because I promise you, I had youth advisors for like 15 years, like who were stuck with it. And I would have done a lot more sort of sitting together and letting that happen and praying together and celebrating with each other. Because I think in the end, this whole book is about authenticity, right? Like it's about like your core and recognizing that core in other people and letting people be their authentic selves. And that is where we find joy in being loved and accepted for those authentic selves. And anyway.
Can I just add something really quickly? I think one of the things that I've tried to do, and this is sort of parallel to youth ministry, but our children are so overscheduled. They have so many things going on in their lives that they're told that they have to be perfect or the best in, not just school, but also track and also piano and also drama and all these different things. And as an adult, I realized there were a lot of things I wasn't trying because I was afraid of failure. And so I started taking tap dancing classes, and I suck at them and I don't care because they're really fun. And it's really refreshing to have opportunities in my life where I don't have to be the best and I don't have to be good at it. And so I really try to model that for my students, and for my whole congregation. But we have a recital coming up, and I am inviting my children to watch me suck at tap dancing, which is extraordinarily vulnerable, right? But also it's like you invite me to your basketball games where, yes, I get to see you make the shot, and also I get to see you fall down and act like a dingus because you failed in this basketball game. I also get to watch you lose because you don't always win. And I think that's one of the most important things I've realized just over the course of the last year is the give and take of that vulnerability. So I'm not just expecting you to be vulnerable with me. I'm giving you opportunities for me to be vulnerable with you, not only in the context of what happens in the church, but in the context of what happens in my whole life. Because if you're going to invite me to do that for you, shame on me if I don't model that and invite you to do it with me as a parent or with me as a, whatever other roles that I have in my world. And so that's been, I'll let you know how it goes. They might just make fun of me for the rest of eternity, which I'd be totally okay with. But yeah, I'm inviting him to my tap dance recital.
I appreciate that. I want to end on this idea of the embrace that they talk about in chapter 4. And they talk about it in four act movement. So it's opening your arms to youth, waiting for them to come, um, closing our arms around each other, which isn't a like a me or a you thing, it's a us thing. And then like releasing. And the part of that that spoke out to me is the sometimes like you have to sit in that waiting for longer than you want to, and you can't force it. And so I think to close out our time together, I guess my hope for you all is that um as you open up your arms, which um you all have chosen to do by being in ministry and investing into your youth, and as you sit there and wait, that you will have youth see that you are passionate about them and that you care about them, but also that you will have enough grace for yourself that you don't need to be everything to everyone. And if a youth doesn't come and accept that, um, have faith that there will be another person waiting with their arms open for them. Um, so yeah. So anyway, I really like that imagery. Christy, do you want to close us out?
I can. I'm just going to say, go in peace, be open, listen, wonder, and embrace when you can. So, amen.
Yeah, thanks for being here, guys. Really appreciate you guys.
Yeah, see you on Tuesday, I hope, when we really will talk about confirmation.
Thank you all so much. Take care.
Yeah, thanks.